Good afternoon, everyone. We are at the 9th DCAC Live here in Austin, Texas on the Data Center Revolution podcast. This afternoon, I have Freddy Padilla, who's joining me, and then I also have Mark Gusakov. I think I got that right.
Nailed it. You nailed it.
Awesome. Joining me for a really, really important topic, especially within this industry and some of the challenges we're facing around talent and some of the things that we need to take responsibility for and things that we can do to change that. So before we get into it, just want to introduce everyone a little bit. My name is Karli Waldon. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at Overwatch. My background is not within data centers. I've been in the data center industry for about a year. I know, Mark, you've got about 3 years or so into the industry. Freddy, you are a veteran within the industry, so getting all sorts of different perspectives. But my background really is around talent development, human resources operations, and so all very unique perspectives. So I'll start with you, Mark, have you introduce yourself, and then we'll move on to Freddy.
Thanks so much. I'm sorry I'm underdressed too. I noticed we have blazers, so I just wanted to apologize in the beginning. Mark, thank you, Karli. Mark Gusakov. I am the Chief Certification Officer for the International Data Center Authority, and I am the Advisory Board Governance Chair for the Nomad Futurists. Nomad Futurist is a nonprofit that demystifies digital infrastructure for emerging talent in our industry, basically getting anybody who doesn't know we exist educated on what we do.
Okay, well, so I'm Freddy Padilla. I'm a principal at Waterloo, MEP Engineering. We do design. I'm also one of the founding members of Hola Data. Hola Data is a nonprofit organization that is helping to get Hispanic people engaged into the data center community. Our goal is to increase the participation on Hispanics in the data center community in the next 20 years.
That is fantastic. Well, I think it'd be really great just to kind of start with kind of a state of the industry, where we're at, what we're facing from a labor perspective, or it's a crisis. We've got the silver tsunami. We've heard that on stage multiple times.
I wouldn't know anything.
You wouldn't know anything about that, Mark? No. And then just from a talent skill gap perspective. So what are some of the, just kind of from your perspectives, in this industry for a very long time, and then Mark, all of your efforts, what is the state of the industry right now?
Go ahead. All right. Aggressive. I think that's a great word to start with. In the news, we hear a lot of things about AI. So that's that sometimes dirty word, but then sometimes necessary evil that we talk about and what that's going to do for us. We know that with the advent of AI and the need for higher speed compute, moving from HPU to GPU, that we are going to need about 300,000 engineers to come into that. Now, when we talk about engineers, a lot of people think I need to have a degree in engineering. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to be a degreed engineer. And I think that's one of the things that we need to start being a little more loose on when we talk about engineers specifically, that I know, coming from my father was an engineer, my brother's an engineer. I knew a lot of engineers throughout my career in industrial automation and fluid power, that they were very mentally capable engineers without the degree. So we need to start thinking a little bit differently about that, especially when we're thinking about skilled trades and we're thinking about people coming out of, our service members that are coming out of active service and then transitioning into civilian life. There are those skill sets that are inherent in that as well. And some of the other numbers around this, numbers are a little bit old, but they're still true. Generally speaking, we have about 45% of our industry, and I really hate to do this too because you are this demographic, right? So about 45% of the people fall into Freddy's demographic, where we have 20 plus years in the industry. And then about 30% roughly are people who have 10 to 19 years in the industry. And what that tells me, having 3 years in the industry and, coming from industrial automation and fluid power, aviation, aerospace, government contracts, my demographic in this industry makes up about 8%, and that's that 1 to 5 year gap. So we have a deficit in people that haven't been in this industry very long, and 3/4 of the industry having a decade or more screams retirement. I mean, that's that silver tsunami, which unfortunately I don't have any here, but that's that thing that we need to start overcoming right now today, and we're already starting off in the hole. So we need to very quickly ramp up and secure. And it's one of the reasons why Nomad Futurist is really focusing on high school, college aged people or post high school, so that we get the skilled trades in for the immediate need that's going to be thrust upon us and the massive human capital deficit that's up against us. And then even in IDCA, we're taking the people that are now of a working age and providing certification programs both at the engineering and operations level and a cross-trained perspective as well within that.
That's fantastic to hear. What
So
about-
like he said, our industry is growing. Our interest on, and it's growing fast. Our industry has always been growing, but I think it's now on a point that is growing a little bit faster or much faster than it used to grow. So that is creating a challenge with the people that we currently have and the people that we need. So, as Oladera, we've been trying to do certain things to try to improve the people that we have. So we have a program, a mentorship program that we're launching. Hopefully we get a lot of people on it soon. That's to educate and train the people that we have today so they can be more capable and do a better job and try to improve on what we have. So we have that. And then we also are working with the people, like he said, the people that are coming into the industry through scholarships and job fairs and trying to get people more engaged into this market. We're working in trying to set up job fairs so we can help people allocate jobs for this type of industry. So trying to be a middleman or to try to be able to help locate these resources so Hispanics can get a higher representation in the data center, at the same time contribute to the growth of the industry, which is hardly needed, and we all know that the industry needs these. So that's kind of where we are right now.
And what would you say? I mean, what if leaders fail to adapt to these changes? From someone who just came into the industry a year ago, the perception is like, it is really hard to get into this industry. I knew some people, right? So maybe it seemed a little bit easier from where my position was in life. But what about someone like a college student who has a marketing degree or a business degree or HR degree, but they're, maybe they're having difficulty finding a job elsewhere? How do we get people, interested in this industry?
Well, 75 questions and I have 1,000 answers. I don't know if I agree that it's hard to get into our industry. I think most of us might agree that we fell into it. We came into it by accident. At least I did. So for me, it wasn't hard.
I did too.
Yeah,
by accident.
By accident?
I don't think that it's a difficult thing. We are a very friendly, very welcoming, and we want people coming into this industry. So that piece of it, until we can start buying Super Bowl airtime at millions of dollars a second, it's really a word of mouth initiative. I've been traveling all over the world to go to schools, colleges, trade schools, high schools, school, Sandusky, shameless plug, but, went to Sandusky High School with Aligned Data Centers because they're building a data center across the street. Half the school is skilled trades. Half the school is reading, writing, arithmetic. And we talked to the entire skilled trades curriculum to tell them that the building that's being built across the street from high school is a data center. This is what a data center is. This is how it is. And one of the things that we didn't really consider when we went in there was, before it was a data center, it was a General Motors plant. And almost everybody in that town's mother, father, brother, aunt, uncle worked there. Now there's this massive sense of community and belonging. And I missed that walking into the room. I didn't consider that, wow, there's a really strong tie to this piece of land or this building or this job. And there's a lot of pride in that because, in the Rust Belt, quote unquote Rust Belt in where I live in Buffalo, that component of community and belonging within that was very strong. And they're very proud of this. So then the conversation quickly shifts into, my aunt worked there, my uncle worked there, and this particular school has an aviation program where they're learning to fly drones. And they asked Phil, hey, while you're building this thing, can we fly our drones overhead and start taking video and do a time-lapse thing and, record the progression of the construction project? And it's like, wow, we just went from data centers to now we're using drones in data centers. And then it evolved, into, well, we need welders, we need electricians, we need all these other things. And what we very quickly found out was there was no program, and I hate to keep throwing the ball jokes out there, but there was no program, including cosmetology, that we really couldn't incorporate into the data center world. And my favorite question at the end of this was, name something you guys are doing right now, and I'll figure out how to get it in data centers. They threw out like psychology. Like, if I go to get a psychology degree, how do I do this? So we need to understand mental health, mental well-being within, our operations. This is HR, classic human resources, but we also need to understand what other people think in the community. We are not a loved industry per se by people who want to protest or feel that we're energy hogs or feel that we're using, excesses of water, even though they don't want to give up their Netflix or their Amazon Prime at the expense of having us go away. But when we understand how other people think and we can relate and talk to them openly and answer their questions and then share with them what we're actually doing on sustainability initiatives, now it's, they really aren't the devil. They're really here to help us. So there is almost any path that you could imagine. I have an English writing arts and a theater and acting degree. So here I sit with the skills I have to bring into this industry. And I came from a fluid power background. So did a lot of cool work on direct liquid cooling and talking about some of the specs around that we didn't have fluid power experts in this industry. We had mechanical engineers, we had electrical, but I took the skills that I had and I brought them here. And I try every day to do absolutely the best that I can with these skills. And that's why I think people who are coming out of service, transitioning service members are really good because they're regimented. They know a process. They have a plan. They can execute. Engineers are, critical to our development and to our growth in this industry. So we need to be thinking about how are we going to accept more people into this space that are smart and have the resources to bring in for us to be successful.
It almost sounds like there's a call to action to some of these folks like Freddy over here who have been in the industry for a really long time to start a little bit of a PR campaign here. We need to get out there more.
This is a great segue for what I was just gonna say. Yes, this is correct. Yeah, you couldn't have pitched it out that better. So education, of course, in Guadalajara we have this pillar called education. So we came up with this thing called The Lighthouse. It's a podcast. The idea of this podcast is to educate and to communicate our experience and other people's experience, to show them how do we got into this market, into this kind of type of work, so they can see and learn how do we got here, to try to inspire other people to want to do what we did and want to join what we're doing. So, when we talk about job fairs, these job fairs are about not anymore about I want to be in X company. It's about come to this kind of business, come to this market, come to this mission critical market, join us. So we feel that if we do that, some people will know, because many of us, I think he just said it. I think if you ask many of the people that join the industry, they just didn't know the industry before they joined it.
But we're trying got to an AOL CD, right? So everybody gets an AOL CD in the mail and they use it as a drink coaster, but they don't actually know what we're doing.
They don't. And they don't even consider that when they're looking for a job or when they're looking for a career. Yeah. So what we're trying to do is change that, educate, try to make sure that people understand what we do. And I think for when you talk about all the different things that people train for, either in college, either in, many of these things can be used in a data center. It's a little world of its own. It's got all the components of almost a city. Yeah. You got it all. You got people, you got finance, you got trades, you got engineers. Everybody can contribute. I was lucky enough that I'm actually an electrical engineer. That's the mecca for us. So I was lucky. I just landed in, and it was great. Yeah. But you don't have to be an electrical engineer to love data centers. I think I know a lot of people that have, that they're not electricals or mechanicals, or people that are actually working on the design, on the how to make it work and so on. There's so many things to do. And I have learned so much from people that have not, me as an electrical engineer, I have learned so much about this industry from other people that are not engineers. Like he said, you don't have to be an engineer to be able to contribute. So I think that is important.
Absolutely. Well, on the flip side,
Can I ask a quick one before we get off of this one?
sure, of course.
When you mentor someone and you have a mentorship program, what do you think generally is one of the skills that you see emerging talent lacking that they need the most? I bet our answers are very different too, by the way. That's kind of why I'm curious.
Well, I think many people, they do not understand how to work the industry. And, and I think that is, that is one of them. I always try to teach that one of the most important thing is to care more about, I think the mission, I think they were mentioning here, the mission or the project. In this case, we call it the project or we call it the mission, and try to learn to care much about your team, about the project, that what you care about yourself, and that will return back one day to you. You just have to be patient and care and care about the team and the mission or the project, and then that will pay back. And sometimes that patience to do so and wait and do that sometimes is lacking, because in these days people want immediate return and they want to see, I care about this, but it's gonna care back to me right away. And I said, no, it doesn't really work like that. You care about the people and the people will care back, but it's just not immediate. It's not a video game that you just do something and you get reward back to you at a specific moment. You sometimes have to be patient and wait. And I think that is, to me, one of the things that I teach them most. Wow. I try them to do so. That's one of the things that I do personally. I said, listen, you just gotta learn to be patient and you gotta do these things. But that's, to me, very important skill that is missing these days. But people learn it if you teach it. You just have to teach it.
We're not that different, surprisingly. I thought you'd have a completely different answer, and we're sort of similar. We're on a parallel path. The one skill that I see the most when I mentor people coming in is the social skill and the ability to communicate back and forth. So when you're talking about patience, you're talking about the understanding and being able to have empathy and sympathy and talk and understand and communicate and translate. Whether you're translating engineering speak to sales speak or purchasing or management, that's a very strong inherent skill. But I mentor a lot of young people that say, how do I go talk to that person? What do I say when I go over there? And I think as a society now, we're having a very difficult time pulling the earbuds out of our ears and stop looking at our phone. And we don't have this, and this is why I value what we're doing.
It's funny, right? What the data center industry, right? And then what's actually causing these issues, it's the social media, the actual, hey, pick up the phone and talk to someone. Absolutely. So, I want to go back a little bit when we were talking about bringing people into this industry. There's a flip side of that. And given what Overwatch, part of what we do, right, is we'll be saying, hey, this person has to have 10 years of data center experience. This person has to have 7 years of data center experience. There's only so many people that have that, right? And how are we going to let new people into this industry, and not just for good efforts, but to address current issues. So what do we, how do you go about that and changing that mindset? Because, hey, there's deadlines on things. Hey, I don't have the time to invest into someone. The flip side of that patience, right? I don't have time to invest into someone. I need a grown up that can go and do that project right away that has that 10 years of experience.
That's a great question. So I go around in some of the places, some of the community college and some of this thing, and then try to do speeches and try to talk to these kids and, and try to help with this, because of course they don't have that experience, but sometimes they don't have it because they don't have a plan. Right. But when you have a plan, things change. So one thing that they can do that I always recommend is, if you're studying to be in the market, sometimes you can, the work that sometimes you work and study. Many people do that, especially at the community college level. So what you do is you say, listen, maybe you should go to that project, be labor on that project, because that counts as an experience. If you're there, you're, when I'm looking for somebody, if the person had that, that initial experience somehow as a helper or was there present, it doesn't matter how it was. I'm actually say, wow, okay, this counts. So we just got to be more creative how to count that experience and for make sure that people understand that that is the way it works. So when you're working, instead of working in a restaurant, maybe work on a data center construction project as a helper, because that will give you the edge later on to be able to get a different role when you're looking for it. It will count in your favor. You can always, do training and other stuff to try to compensate for that. We do that. They say, listen, I don't have that, but listen, I went to this program. I study, in my particular case, we have people that go to drafting school and they go to drafting school. And I have many of my guys who go to drafting school. And then with that, they build up and then they continue growing and taking more and more and more. So they start a little bit. You don't have the 10 years, but you can go and try to get an entry-level position. I think as an industry, we need to start making sure that we have enough entry-level positions so people can grow. That's kind of where I stand on it.
Yeah, it's where do you start? I mean, that's the frustration, is that we get that question a lot within Nomad Futurist. And that's why we started building a structured curriculum around very small, easy to digest, high school learning level modules so that we could cater to high school, college, post-college transitioning people who either want to come into the industry, from the outside like me, or skilled trades. And we started very simple with 10 to 15 minute modules on things like, what is data? What is a data center? What does topology mean when we talk about that? What are operations? And then break those down into the acronyms that we all love to use, MOP, SOPs, and cracks and craws. And, we can talk about that to people all we want, but we're speaking a foreign language. They don't understand what we're saying, and we have to create those definitions. So we have to build that out. But then we're also building modules around things like the other buzzwords, sustainability, power, inclusion, things that are important for building the culture that we then have a sustainable ecosystem. So we took that initiative on. That'll be launching in probably about a month or two. We'll have the first 4 modules that go live. And then human capital is our IP. So we're putting people through this process. And then we'll be able to work with them, monitor them. We have a job board, so we'll be able to kind of work around. And then beautiful partnerships with people like Overwatch, and Nomad Futurist, another shameless plug.
You only get one more, by the way.
I can't even help myself. I better get them all out. But with a partnership with somebody like IDCA, so that you've got the early adoption, you're starting young, you're putting through a 100 level data center course, then a 200 level, then a 300 level. So you have this knowledge, and then, okay, now I'm ready to go into the workforce. I need to certify myself. I need to get myself certified to design. I need to get myself certified for operations because I'm going into this role. So that's why some of these partnerships are important. And that's why building long-lasting relationships across groups, like yours, like ours, iMasons, we are all coming together. And in case, oh my God, here comes another plug. We announced today on LinkedIn that we have formed a partnership between Nomad Futurist and iMasons. We've all these different organizations, and we don't want to recreate the wheel. We don't want to duplicate efforts. We don't want to step on toes. There really isn't any because it's not competitive entities, but iMasons and Nomad Futurist. I mean, God, how many years did it take for this to finally happen? But now you've got these two organizations that are starting to work together. Nomad Futurist as the connective tissue for education, and iMasons with these great 4 pillars around innovation, diversity and equity, inclusion, sustainability. We're starting to build and bridge a lot of these gaps. And I think we need to be working together more. We all need to be working together a lot more.
Yeah. And I think I'm it's important to talk about the education side of it. I work on design, which is you need to have a degree and it has to be specific. So things are changing there too, not like it used to be. And I think when maybe 10 years ago, when we were looking at these, people were always looking people with experience and this and that, with these resumes. And I think it's important to say that now, I talk to my peers and people on the industry, like, for example, in my own company and in many companies now, they're looking for people that are just fresh out of school, and they're willing to train up and to learning that is paying off great. So I think it's changing that too, that mentality of, people, if you're at school and you're listening, try it, because people will hire you, especially in our industry. You go there, they're willing to train and teach. And I think it's important to say so. Come to my company and many of the other companies, try it. You see a design firm, you see that they're doing data centers, go for it. Try to apply because they're looking for young people. They're looking for fresh out of school. It's important.
Fresh out of school with a good mindset, work ethic.
Yes.
Because the reality is, as someone who starts college today in 4 years, what they've learned is in this industry is probably going to be irrelevant from a technology perspective, everything like that, right? And so that soft skill piece is really, really, really important. And so I want to talk to you guys a little bit more on like, you know, as we kind of talked about, okay, college students, we're talking about high school students, looking at other maybe different talent pools, whether, you know, you touched on the transitioning military prior service members, or maybe it's, you know, technology counterparts. What are some of the different areas that you guys are seeing, we're exploring, maybe we're not tapping into enough, or we should tap into more?
I got a really fun story. This is one of my favorites. So in February, I was no longer in the working man's game, okay, working person's game, and I started trying to figure out where I was going to go, what I was going to do. Was I going to go back to doing what I did in industrial automation, or was I going to stick in the data center environment? How was I going to do that? And I started getting an infeed of requests based on my skill set. And we've all seen it, right? So you're on LinkedIn and it's, hey, I think you'd be a great fit for this. You know, I saw you made donuts when you were in high school, so we have a baker's job. You know, the recruiters aren't necessarily going in and honing in on the skills you have now or what you want to do because they don't know. They're just working off of data points. And, you know, right, wrong, or indifferent, this is what we're up against. So I came from industrial automation and process control, and I did some military contract aviation work. So I get these 3 requests for me to send my resume, and they want to talk to me deeper. One of them was a military contractor, one of them was in aviation, and the other was in industrial automation. And one of the skills that they said they wanted was, must have data center experience. And I immediately was intrigued. So I'm like, man, people gonna, like, do I get to go work for, like, you know, one of the airlines in their data center? Cause I was doing some of that before. Or hey, do I get to go work in the military in their data centers? You know, super high security. This is really cool. No, it wasn't that simple. They wanted the skills that the data center industry trained me on. They wanted the regiment. They wanted the process. They wanted the operational stability and resiliency that was in my brain, and they wanted it back. And that terrifies me. So our industry, you fell into it, I fell into it. Our industry is based on all of these skills that we brought in. You know, I don't think anybody's going to hire me for my English degree or my theater degree, right? I mean, and I'm really good at this, by the way. Just kidding. But as we start to pull people from their industry into ours, now they're taking them back.
Yeah.
We need to be very careful of that. And when we talk about things like retention, how are we going to keep somebody from me from going back to where I came from? It's really comfortable. I mean, I did it for 20 years, so why wouldn't I go back?
You can't now.
No, I can't. I mean, geez, why would I go anywhere else? Just be homeless and eat cat food, you know, not wet, but dry. But that's something that we really need to be very conscious of. And we need to work very, very hard and diligently on retention, understanding the individual's needs, individual's goals, so that we don't lose people back to where they came from, because they're coming for us. I hate to break it to you, but that's 3 companies that reached out to me, completely different people, but they all asked for the same thing. That's terrifying.
Well, Freddy, you know, being in the industry for 20 years, you've probably seen it more with all the projects and stuff where people do get burnt out, right? They'll go on a project for 18 months, 3 years, whatever the case may be, and they burn themselves out and they go to a different industry, or they go across the street for $1 more per hour, right? What are things that are going to need to have to change on that? Or like, what efforts do leaders like yourself are you taking to start, you know, retaining people, developing them, versus just saying, hey, I'm going to pay them a little bit more money, keep them busy, and then, you know, hey, in a couple of years, they're going to be tired and I'll find their replacement, because that mentality doesn't work anymore.
No, it doesn't. And I think, you know, the secret, I think, is communication on this. You have to make sure that you communicate You know, you want them to be able to do what they want to do or where they stand in their careers. Some people do want to work hard. Some people are in different stage in their life and they don't want to work. So you have to work with them. You have to understand. In the past, you were the employer and people needed, you know, I go back to the history, but back in the day, you know, people will do what your supervisor will say to do, and your supervisor say, well, you gotta get the job. Normally, you know, like my dad, you know, you do what what you've been told. And I think now we have been changing to understand what the employee need and try to provide what they need at the moment they need it, because that will help you. That will help retention. If you listen to them, if you provide what they need, then you should be able to retain them. What they need is sometimes leadership. What they need is sometimes
not sometimes leadership, all the time leadership. Yeah.
Well, sometimes they need,
but the right kind too.
The right kind too,
sometimes they need that, but sometimes they need time.
Yeah.
Because they're in a stage in their life that they need time. So some people, you know, you will think that everybody needs leadership, but sometimes some people say, well, I just need time because I'm in this particular situation.
Yeah.
My parent is sick today, you know, and then I need time. I just need to be able to take care of this and take care of that. So you have to work do what you can to adjust the work so they can actually do what they need to do in that particular moment. You know, if that makes sense. So I think that's something that is changing, and you have to adapt with your employees versus how it used to be that the employee had to adapt to what you do. Now it's a trade. They work with you, you work with them. It's a give and take. I think that's what is changing.
One of my favorite fables in our industry is when the CEO says in the board meeting, you know, well, what if we train our people and they leave? And then the COO says, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? And this is a component of retention that we must be considerate of, that not only if we train them and they leave, you know, why did they leave? You know, it's not based just on that anymore. But if you don't have the skills to allow you to do the job that you need to do, you have that imposter syndrome that then gets amplified, and then you must leave because now you don't feel like you belong. So right on the money with your point. This is something that we see all too often from a
Well, and COVID really changed everything, absolutely everything. People reevaluated why they're going to work for whatever employer that it is, why they're working there. Hey, does this company's values align with my current, my specific beliefs or personal beliefs and core values? And so, there does have to be, and I'm starting to see it a lot in this industry, but there needs to be a significant investment in leadership development, proper programs, apprenticeships, partnerships, internships, and I'd love to continue the conversation in another podcast of going further beyond that. And we're talking about generations, I think we were talking about like 3rd and 5th graders, right? Like, hey, we target high school, but why aren't we talking about this earlier on? So for another podcast.
Because we didn't learn from our past mistakes.
Right.
I mean, that's why we're in the problem now. So 10 years ago, if we would have focused on 3rd grade, we wouldn't be where we are now, because we would have already informed and educated. But now we're trying to play catch up, and we're talking to high school at that level. But if we miss 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we're going to be in exactly the same boat. And there's this multiplier that's happening. It's an exponential hockey stick ramp. We hear that term all the time, that we're not going to be able to catch up unless we start younger.
You do.
Absolutely.
Agree.
Yep. And so kind of shifting over to, I know for some it's a little bit of a buzzword or a sticky point or whatever, is talking about the DE&I and the B part, belonging, right? The sense of community and people wanting to be inspired by what they're doing, and tying all of those things together, right? I know, Mark, you had some pretty you had some opinions on this, right? And I know that you've kind of been poked and killed a few times from what you've said, but a lot of it resonated in talking about the belonging piece and the community piece. So if you just like elaborate a little bit with the audience on that.
Yeah. If we all think the same, we're never going to get anywhere. Even if we all think exactly the same and the oars are all...
Friction is always healthy.
Indeed. Friction, and a little bit of friction always creates a little bit of disruption, and that creates challenges and obstacles, and overcoming those make us stronger, right? So we need to do that, but we're also stronger together. We're very, very weak when we're apart. And I had the great fortune of, my initiative on this thing, and the kind of the reason that I started doing a lot of these things were I was very sick of seeing the negative perception our industry had in the media. I was sick of hearing we're energy hogs. I couldn't stand listening to, we're stealing power, and then protesters are live streaming these things on Facebook. So wait a minute, your hypocrisy knows no bounds. You can't live stream your own protest and it's still going through a data center, but you're protesting the thing that you're live streaming through. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I took some initiative, used my voice, which is the best tool I have, I think, for getting the message out, so that I went on national TV, Dr. Benjamin Chavis' Chavis Chronicles on PBS. And I was very lucky that he is as big of a supporter of our industry as he is. And I got to talk about the positive things in our industry, because the media, unfortunately, they're going to put out there what people want to hear that gets them excited, that gets them ratings. That's what it's driven by. And PBS is facts-based. They're going to talk about the things that are actually important from a very factual perspective. So it was important to me to get the message out for what we're actually doing and what good we're doing in this industry. And we're not just energy hogs. And if we talk about things like nuclear energy, that's not a dirty word, and it's not a bad thing. And it's actually quite clean. And if we don't have conversations and a little friction, that analogy that I gave earlier about the protesters, that happened in Virginia. And we're really lucky that Bill Clayman invited them to come to an event and debate on a stage. And I sat there and listened to this. And what I saw unfold were the people that were protesting, and the people from the industry had to educate the protesters on what we were actually doing. Like, they were like, we didn't know you're monitoring CO emissions. We didn't know you had sustainability initiatives. Like, we thought that, you've got black pentagrams on the ground and you're throwing dead cats into a hole. Like, that's what we thought a data center was. No. We want all the same things you do. We don't want to leave scorched earth behind for our kids. But they didn't know that because we weren't talking.
We have improved a lot through the years. 20 years, what I started designing back in the day to what I design today is so much better and way more efficient. The way we process data today versus the way we used to process data, the amount of savings in energy are amazing. It's just people don't see it. The problem is that we're growing the amount of data that we process in the world, not as a nation, as in the world. And that's the challenge, that we keep using it more and more because it's helping us.
Yeah. We'll never go back to VHS, right? Look, we'll never go back.
So sad.
Tell me about it. I mean, I still have a cassette deck and I still have a record player, and I enjoy the sound quality of that, but it's all MP3 now. Cars don't come with CD players anymore. First time I bought a car without a CD player. I remember when I bought my first car and didn't have a cassette deck. That was sad, 2000s. And then now I get a car and there's no CD player in it. Well, what the heck is that? So we're not going to go back to that. We're not going to regress, and it's just going to keep continuing. So we're going to need more of this. Like it or not, we're just going to need more of it.
So tying that back, right, we were talking about diversity and stuff. And so we were talking about diversity of thought, right? So I think there's been a little bit of in good effort, right, in hiring people, like a checkbox, right, of, being a woman or whatever, XYZ, right? And what we've seen, if we go and we look at all these organizations who have put out organic hiring efforts of focusing on the soft skills, and they're pulling from various talent pools, whether it's out of college, right, or it's transitioning military. There's a lot of great things to be said about transitioning prior service members, with the emotional intelligence side of things and working in a different type of mission critical setting, right? But we're looking at those numbers, and I'm going to give my plug now from an Overwatch perspective. So in this industry, 8 to 10% make up women, right? Well, Overwatch, in tapping into some of these different talent pools, and not, with data center experience, we're able to have 37% of our staff are women. Now we have a lot more, some more work to do there, but, there are other efforts that can happen and other talent pools that we can tap into as well. And so, and we're organically seeing that diversity of thought and experience and perspective, I think, is where you were trying to tie that into, and with the community and the protesters and everything like that.
Diversity is key.
Yep.
And it's important, I think, and the company should do it not because you're checking a box, it's because it can make them stronger.
Yeah.
Because it brings different thoughts, different ideas, and it makes it better.
Yep.
That's the way it should work.
I remember in February of this year, I went to London to an event, and I had the honor of theater chairing, where I'm in a room like this as every panel comes in. So the entire day, I see everyone come in and out, and I watched the number of women. I watched the number of people who were not from the UK, people from North America, people from Africa, a lot of people on the French Mediterranean coast, Indonesia, watched all of these different cultures come in. And I thought, wow, this is pretty incredible. And it was Peter Hannaford who said it in the last panel of the day that I was on. He looked around the room and said, wow, I'm looking around the room, and it's like, it's more than 20% women in this room. This is incredible. Like, this is really nice to see, because 5 years ago we wouldn't have seen this. And then Inga from iMason's on the, she does the DEI thing. She says it's still not enough, and she's right. It's nice that we're making the progression.
Sure.
If we spend too much time talking about it, we don't want to stall it. We want to do. We don't want to just talk about making a difference. We actually want to drive to the change. And if you're not driving to the change and all you're doing is talking about the problem, you've got to be actually active. And things like, we said this term earlier, and sometimes I get smacked on them, upside the head for saying it, but I don't like to see inclusion at the expense of exclusion.
Absolutely.
Where we focus on one group so much that all the other groups are out of it. And the biggest problem that I've been seeing in some of these groups are the message that has to come to my demographic never gets to my demographic because I'm not in the room. And the people that need to understand and make the change happen for all of the people that are like me and my peers, we never receive the message because the group is talking internally, but the message isn't getting sent out. So I keep going back to this thing where we need to be talking and collaborating constantly. And that's why organizations like iMasons and Nomad Futurist and that connective tissue, now we're talking, we're doing things, we're actually getting together so we can talk and listen and push and pull in the industry.
That's fantastic. Well, there were several questions that were submitted prior to the podcast. So I wanted, before we did that, I wanted to have any closing remarks from you guys and then answer these really important questions that our audience members have asked.
Well, closing remarks, I guess, it's been great. I think we should continue to strive to increase the participation in our industry. It's a great industry. If you work with it, you will have a great career and you will enjoy it. I have, so I encourage you to do the same.
Oh, I wish I had more people like all of us in this industry to just double it tomorrow. That would be my goal in life. If I could just snap my fingers and everybody would double. It's like the opposite of that Avengers movie. Snaps his fingers, half of the population dies. Well, I snap my fingers and we double tomorrow. So that would certainly solve the problem, but we can't do that. I throw this challenge out. This is usually how I try to stop myself from talking, because I can talk a lot.
Say what?
Yeah, that's me. I like to say this. I challenge everybody when I try to give somebody an action item. So I say, challenge you with this. When you go home at night and your family knows what you do for a living and can describe it the way that you do, you're winning. You're doing good. You're spreading the message. And if your children's friends know what you do, you're really winning. You're that, I think the gentleman who was on the stage, the keynote speaker today, he was talking about the difference between a warrior and, I don't remember what the other term was, but he was talking about a warrior, strength and leadership.
Warfighter and warrior.
Warfighter, that was it. Warfighter and warrior. But you can fight the war and you can just exchange blows and you can change a couple of people's minds who are protesting. But when your kids' friends no, you're in the data center industry, you're winning, and you're describing it right, and you're spreading the word. And till I can get Super Bowl airtime or get back on, PBS again, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough run.
That's fantastic. Well, lots of calls to action here. We're talking about PR, getting out there, talking about it more, but there is something that everyone in this industry can do, and that's a great call to action for everyone. All right, going into a few of these questions. I don't know how much time we have left here. I know Marley keeps a pretty tight schedule on all of us, but some really great questions that came through, and whoever wants to answer it. What role does technology such as automation and AI play in both creating job opportunities and potentially reducing the need for certain roles in the data center industry?
Well, in my industry, it helps because sometimes, we have this need for to do certain tasks, and AI helps reduce some of those needs and make it easier and make it more accurate. So we are using it to try to improve the way we do our business, with the way we design these data centers. Yeah. So I think the industry is changing with that. So I think that's one thing for us.
I think the old verbiage when I started in this like 3 years ago, a lot of people used to say trust but verify, right? I don't agree with the trust part anymore. I agree with the verify part. And I think that AI is a tool, just like anything, but it's almost like the ruler that you don't ever know if it's going to be completely right or completely wrong, but you have a pretty good idea of about what a foot looks like. So you can get pretty close within an inch. And we like to joke around about Skynets coming and Terminators. If we teach AI too much, it's going to build robots and it's going to kill us all. I hope it doesn't, but we also need to be responsible with what we're doing with this. And we need to really try and focus on the good side of what we're doing with this technology, because it can improve response times in emergency medical service, and it can help and enable and support our service people. It can help to empower people in knowledge and education where there be maybe neurodeficits or, something like that, where we have neurodiversity, that it helps people learn in different ways that we may not know how to teach and instruct. So I throw those things out because that is where we will have AI make a difference. It's not putting us out of jobs. So when the media says AI is going to put us all out of jobs, it's not. It can't.
It's a tool. It's a resource.
It's a resource created by us.
Yep.
So we're not going to allow it to put us out of jobs. It can't paint a car, in this color by hand. It can paint it with a robot, but it can't paint it by hand. So there are things that it can and can't do, and we need to be responsible with it. I feel very strongly about that.
You have a few live audience members today. I know one of the questions I was asking with it earlier is the call to action for be it HR departments, hiring managers, those who have said, hey, we see a need. We know we need more people here, be it veterans, be it women, be it people who aren't maybe in the technology industry, but like he's commented earlier, that need for experience. So what's the call to action from each of you to change that mindset of beyond saying, hey, we need more people, to actually doing what it takes to open the doors to those people? Yeah. Because if you say you need 5 years of data center experience, a veteran coming out of they don't have data center experience, but they've got experience all day long. If you're talking about a student coming out of a trade who is brand new, they don't have the experience, doesn't mean they don't have the skill set. So what's the call to action from each of you to those hiring managers, those HR, those recruiters? How do they change that?
Could you repeat the question or the gist of it?
Oh, sure. Of course. So basically the question is like, what's the call to action to hiring managers, to HR leaders or HR practitioners of how to actually open the door to all these people who don't have 5-10 years of experience in the data center industry?
I'll be blunt on this one, since I made you go first on the last one, on the hard one. I'll be blunt. It really takes understanding what the job is and what the job description is. And if people are trying to hire and they make mandates for things that are not a deal breaker. If you say you have to have 10 years of data center experience, why? I would challenge somebody back and say, why do I have to have 10 years of data center experience? I crushed it with 0 years of data center experience. What I did have was knowledge on things like HR, sales, purchasing, logistics. You may be the single greatest logistics supply chain genius who knows how to build that web and make the dots move around on a map and draw lines to it in the shortest distance. But I know people who operate a data center that can't do that. But that may be what you need. So you really need to have the job description dead nuts accurate for what you want.
I
And then
may
bring the
not
skills
have,
in.
I apologize for interrupting. I may not have repeated the question properly. Like, how do we open the door to all these different pools, whether it's women, it's minority groups, it's veterans, like for hiring managers? What's the call to action to hiring managers, to HR professionals? Like, what do we need to be doing? Like, for example, like instead of just talking about it, right? It's like, hey, for military specific, it's going and building those partnerships with, skill bridge programs
like
and
us
yes,
that are trying to build these bridges to try to help and to try to engage these people that are not currently called for it, trying to educate these people, because that's the goal for us, trying to establish a bridge so these hiring managers can recruit these people and be creative with the things you do. Like, I remember one of my mentors, when I was starting in the career, he told me, when I'm looking for a data center person, I go for a nuclear submarine operator. Those are the ones I hire, and they're great. So what he did is, because he couldn't find them, data centers were new. So he said, well, I look for nuclear reactors operator from the Navy. Those are my guys. And those are the ones I hire. So he found a profession that is similar and attract that profession to the data center industry. And that was a really amazing guy that I managed to learn a lot from him. So yes.
Fantastic. It takes effort, right? It's not like, hey, I want to do something and snap your fingers and it happens, right? There has to be a step forward. We can say all these things, hey, we need to hire these types of people all day long. The reality is it's going to be us taking the investment and building these partnerships, building out these programs, having the patience to say, hey, it's going to take a year to put someone through this type of apprenticeship program, but then long term, hey, we're creating functions of, a director training development that's really focused on obviously training development, but the retention of people, right? And so then you have that incubator of people going and going and going versus, hey, okay, this time I'm going to hire this type of person, this time I'm going to hire that type of person. It's just the long-term strategic programs.
I'm going to go back to my original answer and just maybe throw a twist on it that I see a lot of, we've always done it this way, and this was always the kind of person we hired. Or, back 20 years ago, we had a mandate that you had to have a master's degree or you had to have a bachelor's degree, and we're not gonna be lenient on that. And I would challenge Mac, why? What's the thing about that really made the difference in the person? I'll go right back to myself again. I have 2 bachelor's degrees in this thing. So what difference does that make? If I'm still the one who's executing and doing, I have these skills. Look for the skills. Look for the skills and resources that people have. Talk to them. I talked to some people the other day. I talked to some people in the emerging talent space when we were mentoring, and they're very difficult. They had a very difficult time talking to me. Like they couldn't get the words out. They couldn't find things, but I was patient with them. I listened to them and I stopped and I let them get everything out. And then I would make them, feel a little bit more at ease because they were obviously nervous talking. It's like, you don't have to be nervous. We're just talking. We're just having a conversation. And the more you did that, the more I could get out of them what they were really, really good at. And I feel pretty strongly that in an interview process, we still have some of that old mentality where people get grilled. And it's like, I got to break them a little.
Oh, yeah. And COVID changed everything. I spent over 10 years in recruitment, and I always tell hiring managers, I'm like, this is not an interrogation. Just as much as you're interviewing them, they are interviewing you as well. And if they can't see themselves working for you and being successful and having impact within the organization, then you can offer them whatever you want to offer them, and they're not going to accept the role. And if they do, they're not going to stay.
Right.
That's correct.
Right.
Were there any other questions from the live audience?
Yes. So I want you to expand a little bit on what you just said. Is they also have to be able to see themselves in the role. And if you're interrogating them focusing on, like you said, those base skills that used to be a requirement, are you really seeing if they're going to fit in that role? And if you're not focusing on what's actually needed in that role, when they get in there, are they going to stay? I think expanding on what you just said a little bit there is key.
So the question or ask is to expand a little bit more on the interrogating people. Usually when I see inexperienced or untrained hiring managers interviewing people is when it leads into an interrogation, because that's what they think an actual interview is. And it really just, from my experience, boils down to education, right? Of how to interview, what an interview is, right? I know there's the HR, like, don't ask these stupid questions, but understanding of like, hey, what we can do for you as well, right? There's the employee value proposition. Okay, why should we hire you? Okay, well, why should I come work for you? And if I'll randomly ask people that all day long, like, why should somebody come and work for you? If they can't answer that, then they shouldn't be interviewing people, right? Why should you come work for X, Y, and Z company, or why should I come and work for that? And if you don't have the answer, you don't know why about your organization, right? Then you shouldn't be interviewing people whatsoever. Make sure from CEOs or COOs or whatever, I think, is understanding who's interviewing, who's the face of your organization, who's interacting with the next generation of leaders or potential generation of leaders within your organization. 5 minutes. Okay. Were there any other questions?
I think you had something you were going to say in regards to that. Diving in on that again, that baseline. How do you then define a job? If I'm not defining it on, we used to need a bachelor's degree, this is an engineering role, so you need XYZ. How is another way they can define that to actually reach a larger audience that may have the skill set needed? How can they change how they're defining it?
Do you want to take that one?
Sure. Do you want to say it in the mic?
Just how can we redo job descriptions more or less to attract different types of people?
Yeah. There are resources that are being developed right now, and I know that some of them are okay, right? Like some of the job descriptions that we have out there, they may be very cut and dry. We know what skills are going to be required in mechanical engineering or in mechanical design or in electrical engineering. So you can really put to words what those are going to what you're going to need to do. When we think of things like sales, you may or may not need technical sales depending on what it is that you're selling in the industry. If you're selling air conditioning units, or if you're selling compressors, or if you're selling pumps, it might be good to have some skills around that. But if you're selling insurance for a data center, if you're looking to insure one, or you're selling real estate, there may be other components of accreditation that you need, or certifications, or things like that. And it's going to take a repository and a database to figure all that out. It's not easy. It's not simple. It's not cut and dry. So I kind of went down this rabbit hole a little bit originally. If you're going to hire people, put the time and effort into saying what you want those people to do. Don't just say, I need a master's degree, and then have the job description be this long. I mean, I've done that. I've seen that 1,000 times. It's just there's not enough description on what you actually want, or it's some job description from 10 years ago.
I'm going to challenge that a little bit.
Please,
and sorry to interrupt you, but it's not about just what you want. Like, it's attracting the person. So I've always said, if I can read a job description, I can imagine myself doing the job. Like, I put myself in the candidate's perspective, and they're reading it and they say, oh, okay, if, as a project manager at X, Y, and Z organization, this is what my day is going to be like. This is who I'm going to be interacting with, right? Versus that boring two paragraph. So there is a call to action to HR and to recruitment of all sorts of, like, yes, we have AI, right? And like, let's utilize it. Let's put a human touch to it, right? But also put it on hiring managers as well to be like, paint the picture. Can someone see themselves working and being successful, right? And growing with your organization through your job description? If the answer is no, redo your job description.
I think where we disagreed was, I have seen some really bad job descriptions and some really bad processes. And maybe I'm being too general on that. So I think that's kind of where we disagree, because I have seen some people get it right.
Yeah.
And I've seen some people nail it.
Yeah.
And I've worked for those people. Those are the kind of people I want to go work for.
Sure.
So I think maybe I didn't say it quite right the first time.
We'll give you a second shot.
Thank you. but I still think that we're saying exactly the same thing, just in a slightly different way, that in order to be a good recruiter and get good people and bring the right people in, I was very turned off by the people who had lousy job descriptions that said simple things like you need a doctorate or master's degree. And I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to go talk to those people.
Yeah.
But when the process spoke to me
Yeah.
and I identified that I would be a cultural fit within this, that's the kind of organization that I want to go to. And it screamed to me, I understand you and I want to talk to you. I can also tell you this. This is really cool. This is one of my favorite things. When I went back into this industry and I started working for, IDC, and I came back, and I was talking to some other companies right at the same time. Everything kind of happened all at once. None of them asked me for a resume. Not a one. It's the first time in my career. Never had to send a resume. We talked. We listened. We understood each other. That is a cultural fit. I understand you. You understand me. We had many, many conversations, but no resume. You're not looking at me like I'm a piece of paper and words on a page. I'm a little bit more than that. I mean, now that we're on camera and you can see my beautiful head of hair. But there's a lot more to me than what are words on a page. And I think sometimes some of the people that I've worked with, this is not a general statement, but sometimes some of the people that have asked me to come work for them, it's, hey, let me see a copy of your resume. I know it's not going to go good. I know that that's not what they care about. So there's got to be some humanization behind this. I say that word, but humanization.
Yeah, well, hiring managers need to be creative. They need to be able to work, find a way to get people to look at that job and, like you said, feel it and want to do it. Sometimes it's through telling you what the job is. Sometimes it's trying to find another job that is similar, the target audience that you're trying to reach, and trying to, kind of pull from there. It's just different strategies based on the kind of role that you're trying to fill. I think it's different for different roles. But the concept is to try to get the people engaged into what they're going to be doing for sure. I think we agree 100% on that. That's the number one thing. You
need to visualize it, right?
You have to be able to visualize it.
There's a really cool place down by me in West Valley, New York, and it used to be called the West Valley Demonstration Project. And they took radioactive things. I guess we don't call it waste, right? So like depleted fuel and some things that were used in cleanup and put them in drums, and they stored them. And it was middle of nowhere. Every year when I was a kid, and it was always like a kind of rainy fall day, my folks would take us out there. And they would do an open house tour, and they would show you like the pools where they stored the depleted fuel, and they would show you like these walls that had oil in them, that was 6 feet thick, so that you didn't get any radiation. And they do like a hot dog cookout, and they show you how they like turn some of the product and mix it with silica and heat it and turn it into glass so it was containerized, and they give you some of this stuff. And that memory stuck with me because here's this company, you see all this things on TV and you hear about Chernobyl and you hear about all this other stuff, but here's an organization that's actually taking the time to engage with community. Nobody's going to want a nuclear dump in their backyard, but they're educating people on this is what we do. This is how safe it is. I've got a Geiger counter. Let me show you what it is. Let me talk to you a little bit about the science behind it. And I think we need to be doing that more often. That's why we're doing things like data center tours, and we're coordinating and collaborating with other organizations so that
podcasts, anything we can do to try to educate people to join the group.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
That is the call to action right here. And I think we're at time now, and we could talk about this for hours, and we can continue. This is just the start of many more. If they'll have us back on the podcast, I'm sure they will. But just continuing the conversation and leading the front and making sure that from a labor sustainability piece, we aren't falling any more behind than we already are.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen, for being on.